How's it going, everybody? Grim here again with another unboxing. This time we have the Forge World Knight Moirax with Volklight Vugler and Gyges Siege Claw. So this particular model comes in two varieties from Forge World. It's the exact same Moirax, but then the weapon options are different. You have this one, and then you have the one with the two lightning locks. Depending on how you play the game, in Warhammer 40k, you might prefer one weapon loadout over the other. I personally prefer this one. You can also, with the data sheet, make it so it has two Volkites, which is ideal in my opinion. But anyway, so you can get this from the Forge World website for 67 US dollars. Interestingly enough, if you live in the UK, you can get it for 43 pounds. So 43 pounds does not equate to 67 US dollars. This is once again another example of Forge World or Games Workshop's price tax on other parts of the world as opposed to within the UK, right? It's a lot cheaper if you get this in the UK. If you're outside the UK or even outside the EU, you're going to have to pay more of a premium for the retail prices. But anyway, let's go ahead and get with the unboxing. So, as we open this up, you can see it comes with several different things. Alright, so let's first go look at the instruction manual here. Beautiful color instruction manual. And a little truth in lending here. This is not the first time I'm opening up this particular box. I opened it up earlier, but I had to scrap that video for a couple of reasons, one of which you'll see in a little while. But yeah, so we'll just continue on, though I didn't change any of the pieces or any of the things that came with it. But beautiful picture, all color. Oh, very nice, detailed, right? Most Forge World kits do not have this detailed an instruction manual. So I think that is great. This is absolutely beautiful. Look at that. Very nice. One of the interesting things about the Moirax is it's the only Forge World non-Titanic Knight. So if you ever play Imperial Knights or Chaos Knights, they come in two different sizes. Titanic, well, three technically, but you have the Titanic ones, and then you have the non-Titanic ones, which is these smaller ones, which a lot of people lovingly refer to as baby knights. And so with the Games Workshop models, you have the Helverins, the Warglaves, and now the relatively new Chaos War Dogs. And this is the sprues that you would normally get with those models. Well, at least the Helverins and the Warglaves. The War Dogs, which hopefully we'll do an unboxing at a different time, have slightly different looking sprues. But these are the typical sprues you get with those smaller Imperial Knights. There's legs, right? Obviously, this is the bottom torso right here, and then the groin armor. The sides, these circles are where the arms or shoulders go into, the 2 feet, and then these are the actual upper arms part here. Okay. Here's the top carapace part of it, right? I think it's really cool that you can clearly see in the design of the model that there's this door hatch where the driver or pilot would go into, and if you wanted to, you could easily cut that out with an X-Acto knife and make it so that it opens and closes with magnets or whatever. Here are the exhaust towers. This is the shroud that covers the semi-covers the head. Here's one of the heads here. It's kind of the actual head part. And normally the Warglaive and the Helverin will have another sprue that has the actual faces that you can put on it. Here's the weapon loadouts. You can either the flamer or melta. I think this is the melta, and then this is just a regular heavy stubber, and then the back, and then some wires that hang out the bottom in between the legs. So those are the typical sprues that you would get if you were to get the Games Workshop Helvrin or Warglaive. The only difference is I don't see here a fourth sprue that has like the weapon options and then some of the other body armor pieces, and understandably so, because in the Moirax you get it here, right? All that is gotten here. So the original video I made had this piece of tape here, and it was so hard to get off, and it was so loud in terms of trying to peel it off the plastic container there that it ruined the video. So I had to redo the video. Alright, so here's the typical how to prime and paint your Forge World model, right? Give you little tips and tricks for resin. We've seen this before. Use hot air or hot water to try and bend things back into shape. You're gonna have to use green stuff or some kind of putty or maybe sprue goo to fill in the gaps, because with resin they try and make us believe that it's just a part of the nature of resin to have these gaps, but as we all know, that is not true. Resin pieces can fit nicely together. They don't need to have gaps like how these Forge World models often do. And I think that's just a matter of the company not making the resin cast models better than they do, which they could. They could make it better. They could put a little more time and effort to making these resin pieces perfect. If you get any resin models of almost anything in Japan, for example, right, a lot of these Japanese models and animes, they're made out of anime models, they're made out of resin, and those things fit way better than this Forge World stuff. But anyway, I digress. Let's go and get into the pieces that make this a Moirax versus just a regular Helvrin or Warglaive. And this is the main thing right here. This stylized carapace that goes on top of the Moirax. It replaces this piece right here. So as you can see, it looks really different, right? In my opinion, this looks much more like the carapace or outer exoskeleton of an insect, you know, with the way these kind of segments kind of overlap over each other. I think that's really cool. That's really awesome. You know, it's very funny about this though. And let's go ahead and go back to the instruction manual. Just want to note one thing here. You see where it says right there that you have this little, it's not a void shield, I wish it was, but this little piece that kind of just goes right into the top there, right? Well, that little hole at the top is like this little hole at the top, and this is where the stubber or melta is supposed to go. And you could easily magnetize those to swap them out if you wanted to. But anyway, the stubber or melta goes into the top of that body armor part there for a Helvrin or Warglaive. The Moirax's datasheet in 40K does not have a hull-mounted weapon. So it's kind of funny that they put this in here anyway, just to have another piece, little round piece of resin to get glued into there to make it look a little more nice. But they didn't even need this at all, because there's no weapon option. There's no hull weapon option currently in the rules for a Moirax, right? You have the Moirax. There's no weapon there. You cannot put a weapon there in the current rules. But I don't know, maybe in the future rules you can. So I guess might be that reason why they put that there. Although I think it's personally a design flaw, not flaw, but an oversight where the person who is beautifully designing this Moirax upper carapace just kind of looked at this one and goes, okay, I need to replicate this but make it look cooler. Oh look, they have a little thing for the weapon. Okay, let's go ahead and design a little hole for the weapon in this one too. Even though then later on the rules came out and you can't have a weapon there. But anyway, that's kind of an interesting to take note of. Otherwise, this is a beautiful, beautiful top armor carapace piece to the Moirax, at least in my opinion. We have here now the two shoulder armor plates, shoulder pads, right? And it's not in the sprues because that's the fourth sprue that's missing from the Moirax that you get in the Helverin or Warglaive. But the armor shoulder pads in those kits don't have this nice little raised design here. You're going to have to use transfers or paint on the designs on the shoulder pads yourself with those. But this one, right, you can see one of them has it right there. Very nice. Okay, we're going to look at this, and then we're going to go look at the other one here, because these are the ankle shin armor plates for the Moirax, and this also differentiates it from the Helverin and Warglaive, because the Helverin and Warglaive kind of have this this part here where it covers the ankle, but it doesn't really have shin guards where it covers the shin. And it, what is this? Oh, this is a flash. It covers the shin. So this is also very different from what you would get in the Helverin and Warglaive, and that's kind of cool. Yeah, you can see how this one was designed. So like it's moving out, so like it's walking forward. In the picture here, you see, right? The right foot is forward, so then you have that little extension in between the ankle guard and the shin guard. Whereas this one, the left leg is kind of more towards the rear, so then that little spacer gets collapsed into the armor, right? Cool. Very, very nice. Speaking of armor, let's continue with the armor, and we see here this way the thigh armor, very similar to what you'd get with the Games Workshop versions of the Baby Knights. Yeah. Nice. As with all of these, there's all this little flash that you're going to have to cut off, right? And then there's these gates that you're going to have to cut off, but these seem pretty small, so not too bad. Let's go into the head options, because this is another thing that differentiates the Moirax from the other Baby Knights that you get from Games Workshop. So you have two different head options here, right? You got this servitor looking one, which, I don't know, it's okay. Let's zoom into it. It's all right. Just reminds me too much of just a regular servitor head. Kind of lame. And then you have this one that looks much more like a medieval knight helmet, right? A European medieval knight, which is kind of what they were going for, because these are knights. But you can clearly see it's not a person's head. It's got these little, things on them that kind of make it more robotic. And I don't know if you can see up close, you can kind of see where the eyes are. It's got these little dots that I guess are supposed to be like camera lenses or something like that, right? Optics, right? So you can, because it's a robot, right? That's the whole point, is that it's a robot. So that's a very cool head. This is specific to the Moirax. You don't get it in the Helverin or Warglaive. It kind of reminds me of a Warlord Titan's head a little bit, which is cool, right? Because this is a baby knight, right? So it's a baby version of a Warlord Titan, or really baby version of a Warlord Titan, because the Warlord Titan is like a giant version of a normal Imperial or Chaos Knight. But anyway, that's very nice. Okay, this is the head shroud. It's a customized head shroud to fit those head pieces. It replaces this right here, right? So you're not going to need this when you're building the Moirax. You're not going to need this when you're building the Moirax, obviously. You're kind of not going to need these either, because they're not weapon options, like I said before. You're also, later on, as you'll see, you're not going to need these. There's a lot of things on this sprue. In fact, it's funny, almost this entire sprue right here, you will not need, almost. Because the resin pieces that come with this kit have replacements for them. So anyway, this is the head shroud. It kind of goes right on top of the head like that. Speaking of those exhaust ports that you don't need, right? So these are the exhaust. They kind of look like mufflers that replace the plastic ones on this sprue. And they look, in my opinion, much more streamlined, much more cool. Although they don't remind me so much of exhaust. Like these, clearly the design is these are exhausts, right? You got the pipes going into this bigger two connected as one type of thing, with then the exhaust ports coming on top like that. This one just looks like the two tubes are going into a box, right? You're gonna have to actually look on top and see, oh, it's graded. But it's yeah, it reminds me less of exhausts, but it is more streamlined looking. So that's cool. Okay. Now we can go here, and this replaces this, right? Sorry, let me turn it around so they look the same. And I'm not quite sure why. Okay, now I see why. So they had to include this piece, and you can't use this piece. And at first glance, you're thinking, why not? Why did they even include this? Because look, it's the exact same design of the skull and the cog, right? Everything looks almost exactly the same. This bottom part is where like a little round thing goes into, but that could have been the same too, because you can kind of see. You're going to take, if I can find it, this part, and you're going to put it onto here. So you're using the plastic to cover this on this resin piece. So why did they even bother including this resin piece? Well, the answer is at the very top. And you can see how on the regular plastic version for the Helverin, it's flat, and this one is rounded on top. Because the Moirax armor on the top is different from what you get in the plastic, right? And so that one has to be more rounded to kind of fit in there. I don't know if you can see that. So that explains why. Yeah, I always thought, why did they include this? But there you go. That's the answer. That's why. These are some connectors that you connect the shoulder pads to in order to connect to the body. Here is the groin armor that replaces the groin armor that is provided in the plastic version. So you can choose which one is better, in my opinion. Since you got the two versions, take your pick when you're building this, right? Whichever one you want. Let's see here. All right, what do we got next? Oh, okay. This is, unlike the back that I just showed you of why they have a resin back, and they also include in the sprue the plastic back. This is, I don't know why they include this. I'm not sure. I'm not sure why, because they include the sprue that has the two plastic versions, and they're almost identical. I can understand the bottom part here is slightly different because this is where the weapons go into, but they could have easily made this the same and not even include this, in my opinion. I mean, because look at them, right? They're practically identical with the exception of this bottom part. So in the plastic version, this bottom part here kind of goes into the weapon arms. So if you're having the two autocannons for the Helverin, or you're having the chainsaw and the multi-melta type weapon for the Warglaive, they kind of go into this where you put the pieces of the weapon together, and they're two halves, and you assemble them onto that, and then so they can swivel. Or you can magnetize it. You can easily cut this little bit off, put a magnet there, put a magnet in the weapon, and you can magnetize it and swap it out as you see fit. And the great thing about the round magnets is that they allow for swiveling, so it serves that purpose as well. This one doesn't have that because the weapon options that come in the Moirax will fit into it. So it's the opposite, right? So it will fit into these upper arms. But they could have made it the same. I don't know why they made it different. I mean, they could have made the weapons the same as the Moirax weapons, the same as the Helverin and Warglaive weapons, and thereby necessitating that the upper arms here be the same as the plastic versions and not even need this at all. But that was a long explanation for something that is not needed, in my opinion, in this kit. All right, let's see. We have some pipes. And, oh, okay. This little piece here, I'll go over that in a little bit. Let's go look at all of these hoses. Lots of hoses, right? And then this is, like I said, this little thing in the middle is what goes on the top part of the body. But a lot of hoses here, and I always wondered why in the way future, when technology is so amazingly advanced, do vehicles and giant robots and whatever still have wires and hoses exposed and not like tucked into the armor of the body? I would imagine that these hoses are necessary for the vehicle or robot to operate. So if the enemy just damages this hose or cuts some wires, then the wire going to that arm or going to that leg or whatever, prevents the leg from working, right? So why have these exposed? That doesn't make sense. If you look at modern day military vehicles, tactical ones may have some exposed wires underneath, but that's just because of the limitations of ground vehicles nowadays. But if you look at aircraft, every hose, every wire, it's all inside the body of the aircraft, right? Because of a couple of reasons, aerodynamics, and also because you don't want wires dangling out all over the place, because that's a weak point for that vehicle. All right, so now we're going to get into the cool part here, or at least one of the cool parts here, and that's the weapon options. And once again, this is the main thing, game mechanic wise, that differentiates the Moirax from the Helverin or Warglaive. And you have this little bit here because this is the emitter of the rad cleanser, and I'll explain that in a minute. The rad cleanser is a ranged weapon that is actually part of the melee weapon of the siege claw. So the Gaijin siege claw has this part right here, and then you glue these claws onto there, the 3 points, 1, 2, 3, right? And then you have this awesome looking claw that we'll show in the picture, right? But right in the middle, in the palm of that claw, is a ranged weapon called a rad cleanser. It's kind of like a flamer. It's an anti-infantry weapon. So one of the cool things about this, right, is that it's both melee and range, and that's kind of cool. And it's good because you don't have that top stubber or top melta, right, on the Moirax like you do on the Helverin or the Warglaive, but that's okay because you get this, and that's kind of cool. Very good anti-infantry. And then on the other side, you're going to get the Volkite, right? The Volkite Vugler. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then you have here this model, the Volkite, very nicely done, right? And then you have these wires that hang out the bottom of it. And once again, why are there wires hanging out all over the place? I would imagine all you have to do is damage these wires and then the weapon no longer works. If you're the enemy, right? That's silly. I don't know. Even aesthetically, I don't know why you would have wires. I mean, some people might say they look cooler with wires. They look more realistic or gritty or whatever, but I don't know. I don't think so. I think in the future, with the technology that's supposed to be in the 41st millennium, which is somehow less technologically advanced from the 31st millennium in Warhammer 40k lore, but the technology is still super advanced compared to nowadays, and even nowadays we don't let wires hang out like that. But that's just my opinion. So that's the last of the resin pieces here. As you can see, it's a very nice kit. It's relatively easy to assemble in terms of it being a resin kit because the gates to the pieces are all small on this one. Not like some of the other bigger models where the gates are much bigger because there's a lot more resin that the cast needed to be filled with, and so the gates are bigger. But that's it. If you have any comments or if you want to correct something I said wrong, please leave a comment below. Otherwise, also I ask that you like and subscribe to my channel. Otherwise, thank you very much. Grim out.